Guess who's back? We're going to be starting the first of our post-review season content on this channel. Got my casual uniform on. This is going to be a quote-unquote badge-off moment. So, without further ado, let's get down to this tier list. I just went on tiermaker.com. I found a tier list somebody had made for best Star Trek shows and movies, and we're gonna list them up, and let's just dip our toes into post-discovery content with the tier list. Reviews aren't going away. Reviews are still coming. I'll be ranking my favorite TNG episodes, and I'll probably be reviewing my favorite. No spoilers. Let's get into the tier list. Okay. So do we want to start from the bottom or from the top? You know what? Let's save the crap for the bottom, the piece de resistance, and let's start from the top, shall we? What you won't find on this channel is someone who is going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. My opinions are my own, although they comport with the opinions of many other people often enough. Sometimes they do not. So when I put this in the top tier, in essential, almost perfect, I need you to not be upset by that because I love Star Trek the motion picture. As it stands right now, I've yet to see the amount of effort going into a Star Trek film since this. It's unequaled. Think about what this movie gave you, okay? This movie proved that Star Trek could go on past the original series. Very important. And it gave us the refit Enterprise. Absolutely beautiful design. Andrew Probert knocked it out of the park. Special effects are beautiful. Still hold up. This is the only Star Trek film to make me cry. I cried looking at the Enterprise in this movie. And it's not boring, guys. It's thoughtful. Yes, it's slow. They call it Star Trek the motionless picture, but I need you to imagine it from the point of view of someone who is into starships. I mean, my favorite thing is ships. Reviews are second in my mind, okay? But I love the ships, and I mean, if you don't believe me, check out my DeviantArt. Wink, wink. This is beautiful. Voyager is beautiful. Of course, the Klingon ship's beautiful. The space stations, 3 or 4 different space stations shown in this feature film. We got the orbital office. We have the space station at the beginning, the big communications platform. You name it, we got it. Just established what Star Trek could be. And Star Trek could be thoughtful, and it could exist into the future. It persists. That's the motion picture. That's why it's my favorite Star Trek film, and it's going right at the top. Of course, we are reviewing shows and films together, so it's a little bit lopsided, but we're gonna go with second favorite, Star Trek the original series. I'm not saying that because it's the original series. I'm not saying it because it's the first one. It is legitimately good. This is the only Star Trek show that hits the ground running on episode 1. It is awesome from episode 1 and into it part ways through season 3. But I like season 3. Guilty pleasure. But think of another Star Trek show that hits the ground sprinting as fast as TOS. You won't be able to find it. The characters are already set up. They feel fleshed out on day 1. It's crazy. So going with Deep Space Nine. Might be a controversial pick. A lot of people didn't like it. I remember the feeling I was getting back in the day was that this was the one that was weird, right? This is the one where if you liked it, you got called a niner. Now, it's it's lopsided at the beginning, and then Worf shows up, and then the Dominion shows up, and it was hinted at early on, and then they finally decide to make it like a serialized thing. And it's weird that in their first attempt at a serialized story, that is a story that continues episode on end, like every episode continues from the last one, their first try was the best. So for that reason alone, it's got to get some points, am I right? What lets it down, though? Just the first season is a little weak, and the very, very end, how they ended it, is a little weak. I'm not a fan of, spoiler alert, trying to turn Dukat into a mustache-twirling supervillain right at the end. Not a fan of that, but I mean, when you compare it to TOS, it stands up. So I'm going that high. Don't shoot me. What's next? Where's Star Trek 6? It's gotta be here somewhere. There she is. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. I first watched this and I was blown away by the emotions that were on offer in this film. Are we so inflexible in our old age that we have outgrown our usefulness? We are reaching the end point of the Kirk storyline. This is where it should have ended. It was a wonderful send-off for Kirk. We didn't need him to come back in Generations, only to be killed when he fell off a bridge, and then the bridge broke and fell on top of him. And then Picard shamelessly buried him under a few rocks. Yeah, no thanks. But Undiscovered Country was a fantastic send-off for the TOS crew. If only they had just left it well enough alone. Dang it. Sulu, top form on the Excelsior. Kirk, top form. McCoy, top form, escaping from Rurapente. Awesome. You guys gotta watch it. It plays out like a really, really good TOS episode. And what can be better than that? I have strange opinions of Star Trek 2. I find it a fantastic movie. I find it just not super imaginative. Emotionally, it doesn't bring as much to the table for me as Motion Picture and Star Trek 6, but still an amazing movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, just because I'm putting it below TOS, Motion Picture, Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek 6, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it is the slightly less lustrous pearl in a handful of pearls. That's all I'm saying. Khan is awesome, despite the fact that Chekhov shouldn't have really known who he was, because Khan was not on the Enterprise at the same time as Chekhov in the original series. I guess Chekhov looked at some logs. He looked at some recordings that they had in the Enterprise computer, just to get up to speed. Iconic scenes. Putting the little bug in a guy's mouth to make him tell the truth, and then the bug makes him go crazy, and then he kills himself. Nutso. An interesting way to mine TOS for content. We're mining TOS for villains, which is nothing wrong with that, because we're not so far into the future that it looks like we're just playing games, where we're just trying to pretend we're Star Trek like we do now. When we mine TOS for things now, we're just pretending we're Star Trek. But Star Trek 2 Wrath of Khan is real Star Trek. Friggin' battle in the nebula? Does it get any better? Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. Many people think this is actually better than Wrath of Khan. I don't necessarily think so, because the plot is a little bit more contrived, and we're undoing what came before, which is a little bit of a black mark. We're bringing Spock back, and miraculously, we didn't bring him back at the beginning. If this movie were made today, we would have had some slipshod reason why Spock came back in the first few scenes, just so we can say we had him in the whole movie. But they didn't do that with this. They kind of came up with a thoughtful way of bringing him back. Turns out at the end of Star Trek 2, spoilers, McCoy absorbed Spock's katra, and they need to put it back in Spock's body that they get from the Genesis planet. So the Genesis weapon was used on some random planet, and Spock's body that was ejected from the Enterprise found its way to that planet, and the Genesis device revitalized his body, aging it super fast, and then they transplanted Spock's katra from McCoy into Spock, and then we got Spock back. Wow, what do you know? Pretty cool movie. What's the Krug, the Klingon villain in this film, winds up destroying the Enterprise, and we have to get the Enterprise A after this. So what do you do when you're out of ideas? You destroy the Enterprise. So this unfortunately started the trend of blowing the shit out of the Enterprise, which we've seen in so many more Star Trek movies, and I'm bored of it. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. A friend of mine says this is his favorite Star Trek movie, and a lot of people remember this one a lot for some reason. I think it's because it has an interesting fish out of water story with regards to the Star Trek characters being back in the past, in the world of today, which is now the past because this movie is old. Miraculous when you watch this movie and compare it to modern Star Trek and just see how different the old Star Trek crews were from the crews we have today. The crews in Discovery and Picard that we see today are more akin to the people in 80s San Francisco in this movie than they are to the actual Star Trek crew that are in this movie. Using various colorful metaphors and whatnot. Anyway, a classic movie. Not super serious. Turn your brain off. Have a good time. You can't go wrong with Voyage Home. Okay. Now, unfortunately, we're getting into the Trek that is not amazingly perfect. It is really, really, really good, but not 100% perfect. And at the top of this tier is Star Trek The Next Generation. Do I need to say anything about this show? Fantastic cast. Fantastic writing. Fantastic music, especially early on, before they got rid of all the cool soundtracks in the later seasons, unfortunately. Fantastic Enterprise design. Fantastic ships on display. Fantastic aliens introduced. Romulans, Vulcans, Klingons, you got Cardassians, you got Ferengi, you name it. They're all on display, and we're all in top form. What drags it down? Some of the scripts in 6 and 7 seemed like they were phoning it in a little bit, and it seemed like the show was getting into the territory where they were shooting scripts that felt like they would have been considered in the maybe pile in the early seasons, which is never a good sign. Do Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, TNG, and Voyager, do they go on for too long? Should these be 5-season shows? Or 6? I mean, classic episodes sprinkled here and there all through it, and I wouldn't want to see any season gone. But tell me I'm wrong, that some of these later seasons seem like we're retreading old character arcs that have been solved, right? Like, we solved Riker's character arc, we solved Data's, pretty much. Not much left to do. Just kind of phoning it in at the end. Still an amazing show. Still a 9 out of 10 at least. overall. Still a niner, but not a Deep Space Nine. What comes after TNG? I'm gonna go with Star Trek First Contact. Many people say this is their favorite Star Trek movie. I believe Bernd Schneider on Ex Astra Scientia says this is his favorite Star Trek movie. I think he gave it an 8. I think. I might be wrong. But I knew he liked it way more than I thought he would. Bernd Schneider, if you don't know, go on, type in Ex Astra Scientia in Google. That's my favorite Star Trek website. I consider him to be the final answer on any questions related to Star Trek. He has the final say. I don't always agree with his reviews, so you know I'm not bullshitting you. First Contact, you're getting the Sovereign class. For me personally, I don't love the Sovereign class. But that's okay. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we're getting a physical model. This is the last of the physical model style shows. And with regards to that, we're seeing the top of the skill level of where physical models could go. Watch some of the scenes of this film. Look at the Borg cube. Look at the Sovereign class. People are shocked by this today when they watch it and how good this movie looks. What's the problem with it, right? Why is it not in the top tier? This is the beginning of jerk-ass Picard. This is the beginning of movie Picard. Action hero Picard. Picard that's mean and angry and spiteful. That drags it down a bit. The plot's interesting. It sets up an origin, if you will, story for Star Trek that clears up a lot of the questions everyone had, like with regards to what was the first warp vessel, what was going on with the Bonaventure, what was going on with Sephram Cochrane. We wiped the slate clean and said, no, this is canon. So we solved it. And I like things that take a firm stance and solve canon for people, okay, and instantiate something as being the truth. I like it when they do that. And then it was canonized again with Star Trek Enterprise, because Enterprise uses the Phoenix in its intro. If you don't know, Phoenix is the first warp vessel that was displayed in this film. Very good movie. Beautiful soundtrack. Check it out. Voyager. What's the problem with Voyager? Voyager's still good, but we're getting to the middle of the road with that one. I'd even think it could be here. Decent, could be better, far from bad. What is the issue? Well, they want it to be new and different. We're sending this ship and we're blasting across 70,000 light years of space, whatever it was. And we're going to see how they get back and how they survive. What's the problem? Every episode we went back to status quo. Voyager looked fine at the end of most episodes. Sometimes they clued in, they damaged it a bit. But everything you get through the entirety of Voyager, you can get better in Season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise Season 3 clued into the fact that you had to hurt these characters to make it believable. Delphic Expanse really took a toll on the Enterprise, and you could tell. But what happened to Voyager over its journey? Every episode, they went back to status quo, and then found out one special thing that, oh my god, if we just did this, we could get a quick 3,000 light years in. Let's do it. Repeat ad nauseum. That's every episode in Voyager. Very comfy show. Fantastic single episodes, fantastic one-offs, very cool characters. Far from bad, but I'm putting it in the boring category. I prefer Star Trek Enterprise. I'm going to put it ahead of it, as you can see. Star Trek Enterprise is like First Contact. It establishes sensible canon. Yes, the ship looked a little bit advanced, but if you think about it, does an iPhone really look as advanced as a cell phone from the 80s or 90s for that matter? In the 90s, they had lots of buttons and they were big and had doodads on them. As it got newer, we seen less buttons and a sleeker form factor, just like the Constitution class. I would actually argue that Star Trek Enterprise, the technology on it, does not look that advanced when you really think about it. It takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of massaging things in your brain, but I can see it. It's a lot more like a submarine. It's a lot more naval. It's a lot more dangerous. You can trip over things on the Enterprise, the NX class. Very interesting. It's thoughtful. Writing's not super amazing, but what you're getting at the end of the day is an interesting show, which is a lot better than just a show that's just comfy and decent. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit challenging, and that's what I liked about it. Season 4, though, on its own, is fantastic. Season 4 stands up with some of the other best seasons of Star Trek. Manny Koto came in as showrunner. My God, I wish we could have got 3 more seasons, because it was awesome. Season 4 is awesome. I like Season 3. Season 1 and 2 are just kind of take it or leave it. Interesting episodes here and there. Lots of boring episodes, but overall, you're getting cool designs. You're getting cool lore. The Enterprise in this looked a little bit like the Akira from First Contact, which is unfortunate. I would have gave the NX class a few more passes design-wise, but still a beautiful ship. I shouldn't even be faulting it as much as I am. And I like the intro. What's next? What else here is decent? Could be better. Far from bad. Not Star Trek 5 Generations. Star Trek series. I'm gonna go with the original animated series here. This is fun. We're introducing cool aliens like Arex on the bridge, the 3-armed dinosaur-like guy. Really interesting. We're taking advantage of the fact that it's animated to introduce cool alien characters. What's wrong with that? Characters got personal defense shields. All kinds of wacky storylines. And some of them were actually very thought out and deep. I won't get into it too much, but according to Gene Roddenberry, he didn't think this was canon. So, does it really count? I'm going to say it counts, and I'm going to put it after Voyager. It's Star Trek. It's real Star Trek. I consider it Star Trek. So, I mean, quit complaining. I don't see Lower Decks on here. That's weird. Where the hell is Lower Decks? I like Lower Decks a little bit, actually, but it's not here. So middle of the road, at least it's boring and not horrible. So what I mean by this is that sometimes boring is good, because boring means it's not disgustingly awful. And these days, I'll take it. So what here comes off as just kind of boring, samey, not absolutely disgustingly bad. Star Trek Beyond. If you decouple this from the first 2 J.J. Abrams movies, this movie obviously is not directed by him, but if you decouple it from that and experience this as just a TOS episode, there's nothing wrong with it. Don't look too closely at the little details, and it's decent fun. We go on a swashbuckling adventure. Unfortunately, we destroy the Enterprise, but the alien ship, or ships, is kind of a clever idea. Instead of one big bad ship, it's a million tiny little ships. Kind of clever. We've seen it before in Enterprise, but on here it was faithfully realized as you imagine it would be with fantastic CGI. It's got all the adventure you can want. It's got the original crew represented by these new actors who do a decent enough job emulating the TOS crew. You get to see an older ship in this movie. We don't just get to see the Enterprise, and we get to see a interesting looking space station in Yorktown. You know, so it's middle of the road. It's not boring. It's not horrible. I'd say it's even better than some of the canon movies, some of the quote-unquote prime movies. I'd say it's better than Nemesis. I'd say it's better than Insurrection, Generations, and Star Trek V. It's definitely better than Into Darkness. So what's coming up next? Star Trek V. You know what? It's not as bad as people say. It gets clowned on a lot on the internet for being a horrible movie. It's not that bad. It every once in a while I can flick it on. It's interesting. It's cool in kind of like a Batman Forever, Batman and Robin type of way. Like, yeah, it's not a good movie, but you can turn it on, just turn your brain off some lazy Sunday and just kind of point your eyes at it and just absorb it passively. You got Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. That's what you got. And you got weird fake brother of Spock, Cybok, which sounds like a fanfic then, and it's even more of a fanfic now with Michael. But it's Star Trek V. I got it on tape here, on cassette tape. I think I got an audio version of it when they used to do these tie-ins. Like, I got a comic with the actual photographs from the movie and a cassette that you play and all that. I have tons of Star Trek things here that I don't think I've shown on video, and that's one of them. It's Star Trek V. Don't look too close. There's some problems with some of the logistics, but you're getting classic adventure. Turn your brain off. What do you want? Star Trek Insurrection. Remember how I said other movies felt like a really good episode of the show? This feels like a bad, forgettable episode of the show. This feels like the worst of Season 7 of TNG. We're getting to the point where it's starting to just be straight up bad. But I just barely keep it from the bottom two tiers, because at least this one doesn't make you want to kill yourself. This is starting to... It doesn't make you want to die. So, it's Star Trek Insurrection. We got weird, selfish, mean movie Picard. And, bad CGI. The CGI suffered greatly in this. We're gone. The physical models are gone. Boring ass plot about Ruafo stealing life-preserving material from some Federation, from some planet that they owned, and the Federation wanted to take it from the Baku or whoever lived there and give it to Ruafo because some confusing garbage about the rights to the planet. And of course Picard goes AWOL or something, and whatever. It's not interesting. Turn it on someday if you really, really want to. Okay, here we're starting in the bottom tiers now. We're starting with Starting to Smell Strange, but not antithetical to Star Trek itself. We're starting with Nemesis. No, we're going with Generations. Generations is what happens when you take Kirk and Picard and put them on screen together and assume it'll just work without any extra effort. You get Generations. They figured they could just, hey, let's just have Kirk and Picard on screen. What could go wrong? And then they forgot to craft an interesting story. Things that are supposed to be cool happen in this movie off screen. Picard's family is killed off screen in order to create an unjustified emotional tether between the audience and Picard that we never get to feel because we never get to see them die. And we use that as a springboard to get into the plot of a boring movie with a boring villain who is trying to make a magical space ribbon come over his body so that he can live in Christmas Town, where Kirk is, because Kirk gets killed in this movie shamelessly and winds up in perpetual Christmas land where he rides a horse and wears a uniform with a jacket with a badge on it, and then underneath he has another badge on the shirt underneath the jacket. Check it out. Maybe I'll put a clip in.
Beautiful day.
Yes, it certainly is.
But just something weird that I noticed. But what's the one thing that makes it not absolutely disgusting? Well, the movie is not super depressing, and you get the Enterprise B. That's all this movie's got. And the soundtrack is kind of cool. We get to see the Enterprise D crash, which, depending on if you like the D, you might think is a good thing or a bad thing. I love the D. I didn't want to see it blow up, but it's kind of an interesting sequence, though. Is it the first TNG movie, or is it the last TOS movie? That's for you to decide. Alright. Okay, here's where the depression starts. Star Trek Nemesis. Just a dour film with just an ugly aesthetic to it that is sad and boring, punctuated by this totally meaningless scene of Picard going on a dune buggy because he liked to drive. Patrick Stewart liked to drive, quote unquote. And so they rammed a dune buggy scene into this movie for no reason, where we need to find pieces of B4's body because, oh my god, there's another Data. Or is there? And we have to put his body back together, and Data sacrifices himself to destroy the Scimitar, which is a bigger and better ship than the Enterprise, and therefore it's scary. And because that ship has a bizarre secret clone of Picard on it that the Romulans made for some bizarre contrived reason, and he's played by Tom Hardy, and he's bald too for some reason, because the audience is dumb. They need to make Picard's clone bald, because if you're bald, that means you're like Picard, right? And if we want the audience to know that this guy's Picard's clone, he better be bald. Well, I don't care. And I wanted to die. And the movie is depression core. But what is next? Star Trek 2009. It is not depressing, but it has so many leaps of logic that we're getting to the point where I cannot in good faith enjoy it. Kirk just becomes the captain of the Enterprise because he's supposed to. This movie feels like it is informed by the whims of the audience, which is dangerous. You're making a movie to please an audience instead of making a movie that makes logical sense within its universe. And that's something Star Trek used to kind of avoid, or at least when they did it, it was sparing. This is where New Trek started. We're now firmly into the New Trek timeline, where things happen because wouldn't it be cool if, wouldn't it be neat if Kirk did this, and Spock was like, no, and then slapped him, and then, oh my god, everything blew up, and then we gotta run, and then we gotta make sure we get this thing, this item, before the bad guy gets it, and there's shit exploding everywhere. That's where this started. I would like this movie more if we didn't get everything after it. I would be able to appreciate it on its own. So that's Star Trek 2009. Kirk goes from 0 to hero in no time flat, which just doesn't happen in Starfleet. But moving swiftly on to the disgraceful and an insult to the franchise tier. This is where we're getting into modern shit. But what is the best of them? Oddly, I'm going to say Star Trek Discovery, because Star Trek Discovery, if you cut out most of the episodes and you pretend that there's a logical throughput of plot between the first 3 seasons, you get a show where a character starts a war, discovers her mom's a time traveler, and then uses her time traveling suit to save the future where she ends up in, and saves the future again with the help of an emperor from the mirror universe. That's the throughput of a serialized show. Does that sound stupid? It has some interesting ideas. Spore Drive is kind of an interesting idea, even though I wish it didn't exist. I wish they had used something that actually already existed in Star Trek, like Iconian gateways, for example. You didn't have to invent the mycelial network to create a new type of drive, and it didn't have to be set before TOS either. Just before TOS, mind you. The only reason they did it was because they wanted to assure people that this is real Trek, even though fans of real Trek would have liked it a lot more if it was set after Nemesis. You could almost not change any of the designs of the ships in this and say it's after Nemesis and it would be believable. Isn't that sad? Yes, it is becoming an insult to the franchise at this point. But I can see how someone would like it. So we'll leave it at that. Next is Star Trek Picard. Granted, this I'm only reviewing the first season here, and putting in the tier list because I only got first season of this. Horrifically boring show, horrifically mean spirited. What is it about? It's about fear and anger and rage, and it's about trampling on everything Picard had achieved before. It's about being sad and dour. It's about going to a Romulan camp and ripping their sign off that said Romulans only and throw it on the ground, stepping on it and starting a friggin' fight, and then where an innocent Romulan gets his head cut off and it's okay. Like, and Icheb's eye gets gouged out and then snipped off. Why did you bring back a fan favorite like Icheb from Voyager just to kill him? You brought him back just to kill him. You didn't give him anything to do. Like, I understand sometimes characters die, okay? But give him something to do. Make him die a hero. He was not a hero. He was there just to prop up 709, who didn't need any more propping up. Just sad. Picard dies in this, and he gets replaced by a friggin' clone of himself with his old consciousness back in there. And Data, for some reason, just accepts suicide in this. And all of a sudden, we're pro-suicide in Star Trek. I don't know where that came from. Why does Data necessarily want to die? Why wouldn't anybody challenge that? He's a robot. He can go on. I don't understand. It doesn't. Remember when Riker wouldn't let Worf kill himself? Remember that? I do. Remember when Picard lived an entire life as another man who had an entire family on an alien world, and then he forgot all about it because now he doesn't know how to be a father? Remember that? Well, he doesn't know how to be a father in Picard because he hasn't done it before, even though we know he did. And I don't think the people who wrote this actually watched that shit. I think the people who wrote this watched Nemesis, and they watched 1 or 2 episodes of TNG's first 2 seasons. That's what they know about the people who wrote this show. And I think that's unfortunate. And they should know better. And perhaps they do know better, but they just don't care, which is even worse. Star Trek Into Darkness is next. I can't even understand the movie. I can't even follow the plot. Admiral what's-his-name wants to start a war with the Klingons by using some kind of secret transwarp beaming technology that he uses in a secret ship that he's using to fight the Klingons, even though we're not in a war with the Klingons yet, because he needs a justification to build the ship that he wants to fight the Klingons with, called the Vengeance. What is it taking vengeance on if nothing happened yet? I don't know. Why is there a model of the vengeance on his desk for everyone to see, even though it's a secret ship? How can you keep it a secret if you're building it in our solar system? It's never elaborated on. It's just boom, boom, pew, pew. Everybody go crazy. Spock is a friggin' maniac in this movie. It's why is it Khan? Why are the characters supposed to be interested in the fact that this character is Khan? Why do we bring Prime Spock back for one last chance of embarrassment to tell everybody that, oh yeah, this guy's Khan and we had a hard time with him in our timeline? Haha. Disgraceful. It's sad. It's sad to see Star Trek turn into this, and it's really sad that it kind of killed off the Abrams franchise because it kind of got decent with Beyond. Just sad. It's just the whole thing's sad. Dour, gray. Many such inexplicable scenes. I'm trying to think of one good thing. I kind of can't. I can't think of anything. It's just dumb. And finally, this almost belongs in its own tier, even below that. Short treks. This is when you take if you take out Calypso, this gets a 0. Flat out, the whole thing gets a 0. If you put in Calypso, this gets a 1. It just brings it up to a 1 because there's so much bad shit that Calypso is such an outlier because it's just barely decent. Calypso looks like a 10 compared to the other short treks. I tried to watch short treks. I gave it an honest shot, and at least half of them I turned it off after the first few minutes. I just couldn't keep watching. So this is not even a fair review of this technically because I could not finish them. I finished Calypso because it was kind of cool. But the biggest offender is the problem with Edward, or the one with the guy called Edward. That's a 0. That is flat out the worst piece of Star Trek I have ever seen in my entire life. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's the absolute dereliction of duty is on display, and that is absolutely disgusting. And the disregard for human life in it is just alarming and makes me think twice about the mental stability of the writers. And that's as far down the hole as you can possibly get. Just check it out. It's so bad, even watch it. I would even say watch it just to see, because it's frighteningly bad, some of this. If you want to actually try to enjoy some of it, just check out the episode Calypso. It's kind of cool. It's got just kind of an interesting sci-fi premise. I won't spoil it here, but I think I've made my case for why Short Treks is at the absolute bottom. I do not see Lower Decks here. So I am going to, in post, I'm going to put it onto this tier list, and I'm going to do that now. I'm going to take one last look at what I've done, and I'm going to make, if I make any changes, I'll post it right at the end of this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Mark out.